mean, the problem with that is that you're taking this enormous agency that, at least in my viewpoint, abused the trust for a long time after 9/11 when it conducted warrantless eavesdropping, and then giving them a very large role, a very powerful role in the whole issue of domestic cyber information. Because once information comes into the United States or goes through the United States, the NSA plays a role. That came out very clearly after during the warrantless eavesdropping period, where the NSA began building an infrastructure within AT&T in San Francisco and other places. The problem is having deep packet inspection by NSA into not just foreign communications, but domestic communications now. The president said that there would be, I think I've got a quote here. Well, he said that there'd be no domestic role for this, but I don't understand how there could be no domestic role if you're talking about cyber information going into and out of and through the United States. So what you have here is you have a very powerful player in the cyber domain, and that'll be the director of NSA, a fairly weak player, and that'll be the White House cyber coordinator. So that poses a lot of, at least from a press perspective or a perspective of somebody who follows these things, it presents quite a dilemma in terms of public civil liberties and so forth. I'd be much happier if they put a very powerful person in charge of all the cyber activity, so that the director of NSA, or the director, rather, of the Cyber Command reported to that person, as well as people in the rest of the U.S. government bureaucracy, and then have a deputy who probably comes from the civil liberties side of the spectrum, from EPIC or Electronic Information Privacy, or the Electronic Privacy Foundation and so forth. These groups that follow the cyber war and also follow the civil liberties side of that. So, I mean, the press is going to have lots of questions about this when I think 100 days is up. How much influence does NSA have and so forth? I think that's going to be a key question. Yeah, what the president said was that he would bar the federal government from regular monitoring of, quote, private sector networks. And I don't really see how that's possible, since the NSA is already monitoring private sector networks. Finally, just one other, just to sort of be the skunk in the parade here, I think there's a lot of hype that goes into this issue. It's so easy. I've been doing this for years, writing about cyber stuff and NSA and wars and everything. And you can hype it so much. It's so easy to get a lead story on the news if you put terrorism or cyber or something sexy in there. It's much harder to get something on the war on cancer, or the war on drunk driving, something like that really do kill a lot of people. So I worry a bit about the hype factor here, because we've hyped the war on terrorism, insanely. We've hyped the war on drugs, hyped the war on Iraq, hyped this new war in Afghanistan now. All these dangers, the world's coming to an end if we don't do something. And I just would like to see it toned down a little bit more on the danger factors. Obviously, there's a danger, but as far as I know, nobody's penetrated the classified systems of the U.S. government yet. Nobody's been killed. There's always a danger of that. But again, I just worry a little bit about being the cynic here. Worry a little bit about the hype factor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to add a little bit different perspective from my colleagues. I'd like to start out by saying that so many of the issues surrounding cyber are the exact same issues that surround our other national discussions, whether it's about banking, manufacturing, the recession or the thought of the recession or whatever. I don't believe at the macro level that there's anything fundamentally different. So when it comes to cyber, what's the proper role of government? What participation and responsibilities or accountability does industry have, particularly as Congressman Davis pointed out, 85% of the critical infrastructure in this country is in private ownership. And lastly, what accountability does our citizenry have? And I don't believe that across the board our citizenry understands that they should have an accountability with regard to this. And so when you look at it from that perspective, from a cultural level, from a political level, the things that underpin the topic of cyber, I think, are fundamentally no different than many of the other issues that are confronting us. One of the things that tends to be a distractor from my point of view is that folks get all hung up on what's the definition of cyber. And to some degree, I don't think it matters. Matter of fact, to a large degree, I don't think it matters. But if you look at cyber as a domain and a language that affixes itself to a level of technology and social networking and things like that, it's a little easier to understand. 20 years ago, we talked about local area networks, wide area networks, and we talk about systems and enterprises, and so people no longer get scared when somebody says megabits or a technical term and viruses, and we've all learned to understand some of the technical language. But what's different today, and why cyber has become a news buzzword, is technology and how we use it is fundamentally changed with not only within our country but around the world, and how we think of it, and its interconnectedness, and how things are made dependent, and those kinds of things. And so the danger becomes we have a lot of familiar terms, but unfamiliar paradigms associated with those old terms. And so I think that sometimes ends up being a distractor. The next distractor is that culturally, both as the Congressman pointed out and Mr. Bamford, is that there's a blurring of what we accept, what we understand, and what's gone before. And what I really mean by this blurring is cyber is global. It has no borders. And so what is domestic versus what is foreign? And so all of our legislation, all of our processes, all of our analysis, if you will, of things, they're lacking. Again, they may have common terms, but the paradigm, somebody shifted the paradigms. Foreign and domestic, military, civilian, and such. I think the coordinator has got three fundamental issues. The first is, as has been pointed out by my colleagues, work on the authorities. The second is that when you add a new position anywhere, particularly in the executive branch, there has to be an accommodation of process. You have to get it in the information flow. You have to be, invited to meetings. You have to be a part, and so there's an element in which you have to create process, and other processes need to accommodate you. And then third of all, you need an agenda, something that works a priority. I think the most encouraging thing about the President's statements and the release of the 60-day report is that the status quo is unacceptable. That came out loud and clear in the report. That came out loud and clear in the President's press conference about it. The report has 45 major implied tasks in about 4 categories of education, securing networks, relationships, and harmonizing and synchronizing efforts. You can't have 45 priority ones. You need to provide that focus and get the agenda which moves things forward.